Good day, and welcome to now the 8th edition of Christ-Centered Reflections from the White Rock Baptist Church. I'm Reverend Stephen Lawrence, and today we've got Reverend Kenneth Cox, Reverend Wayman Rucker, Reverend Donna Jones, Reverend Gardner, and we're so pleased to have the pastor for the last 57 years of the White Rock Baptist Church, Reverend Dr. William J. Shaw. Now, these segments are a part of a series of reflections that we hope will continue to be helpful to you as you seek to follow our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And we're going to turn it right immediately to Pastor Shaw and ask you to get us started today.
Thank you, Steve. I think I want to respond today to an issue that you raised with me several weeks ago in speaking about this day of how does one deal with situations where you seek to have a plan for your life, you think it's according to the will of God, and then something happens that frustrates that plan. How do you deal with it? I want to go back to an incident in the history of the church itself that showed a lot of detours, but also a final point of arrival. The White Rock Church building was destroyed by fire April 1st, 1955, and we were located at that time at 52nd and Arch Street here in West Philadelphia in the same neighborhood. The immediate plan was to rebuild, and to rebuild at that same place, and that was the commitment of the congregation. Shortly thereafter, the pastor became ill, died in January of 56. The church was in a point of loss of real moorings. I had served with him and was called to the church. So we made some decisions immediately. That is, that we would continue the path that had begun under the pastor who died, and that is, we would attempt to rebuild. And we secured an architect, and the architect was to develop a plan for $300,000. In the process, we decided that we'll add air conditioning. And so the price was increased from $300,000 to $330,000. But all was go. It took some time for the drawings to be completed. But finally the drawings were completed, bids were received and opened, and the bids on what was to have been a $330,000 building came in from $580,000 to $800,000. So that we were at a point of real choice. The architect was commissioned to redraw his submission. Prior to that time, while we were in the process of developing the plans, we had an invitation from a congregation in West Philadelphia, the St. Matthew's congregation, that was residing where we are now. And they asked if we wanted to buy. And of course, my response was no, because we had committed to rebuilding. When the redrawn schema was brought back, the best price was $497,000 as an incomplete facility. And therefore, we were facing a detour after detour trying to get back into a building. I then called the congregation that had asked whether we wanted to buy. This was a year or so later, and the building was still open. And I met with them and negotiated a price which was less than what we were committed to. So instead of proceeding with the building, I asked that the congregation meet and make a choice. It was one at a time. Procedures require that we announce 2 consecutive Sundays. Any business meeting would be called. The final Sunday of the announcement, it snowed and snowed and snowed. So that at church that Sunday, literally, we had 17 members. Wow. So we held church. Persons asked me if we were going to cancel the meeting because it had been announced for Monday night. Following that Sunday, I said no, because the announcement is going out. So with 17 people at church on that Sunday, we held a business meeting Monday night. And at the business meeting, there were almost 200 persons who came out. We had a vote. And the options were to continue to build or to rebuild, to relocate here. The decision was to relocate, and we relocated here. We had more space. We had a larger building. It was a completed building. We could renovate it to our satisfaction. So we came here. April 1st, 1955, building burned, destroyed. July 3rd, Sunday, 1958, we came here. We could have been in process of building, or we could have been here. Now, that to me was a clear illustration of the challenge that you raised to me. And that is, when you set goals and it looks as if various things keep getting in the way, how do you keep perspective? And how do you keep from becoming discouraged and really break up over that? I look at several things. Number one, personally, I was not deterred because the decision was not about me. So while I was vested in trying to do this, my vesting did not have my own ego or person involved, whether we built, whether we relocated or what. It was more about what we could discern to be the will of God for the congregation. How could we best do ministry? So number one, the issue is keeping clear of what the goal is. Now, the routing to the goal may be according to our plans as we see best, but that's subject to change. Because while the Lord has promised to guide us and lead us, He depends upon our perception, and our perception at best is not always complete. And therefore, I could not say that if we do this, we deviate from what the will of God is. Our options are always options within the realm of possibility before us, and then seeing what God can do beyond that. So that we were able to move through those periods with one thing in mind. What is our goal? The goal is to have a facility from which we can do ministry and in which we can grow. So that whether we were at 52nd and North Street or whether we were at 53rd Chestnut, the plans changed, but the goal did not. We made a decision and set us off on a path of growth that was not in our options or in our vision when the experience first came. So dealing with disappointment, yes. Keeping focused, though not on the detour, because detours can become points of refining. They can be points of judgment. They have all kinds of possibilities. So believing that God still has a choice, we try and follow what is the discernment of what He is doing, and then we follow through on that. So,
well, I should say that the question that I posed to you came out of our Bible study. We were studying in the book of Romans, and we're in chapter 15, and Paul has, in closing the letter, lays out and says, I am on my way to you in Rome, but first I have to stop in Jerusalem. And then my plan is to go from Jerusalem to Rome to visit you, and then I plan to go to Spain. And we know that when he goes to Jerusalem, a riot breaks out around the temple. He gets arrested. He spends two years at least in jail, and eventually gets on a boat. The boat gets shipwrecked, and then he ends up in Rome. So, and we don't know if he ever got to Spain. So Paul has a plan, and as these things happen, they didn't seem to discourage him. I almost wonder laughingly if 2 years later he ends up in Rome and says, "Well, I'm here at last. This is exactly what I was looking for."
except that when he arrived, he was in chains. So that he didn't arrive as he had planned to start with, so that the circumstances of his arrival were not as he planned, but the fact of his arrival was, and his plan once he arrived was, because he says the gospel is preached at Rome, even though I'm in jail. So one of the things is that we don't determine for the Lord what the conditions are for our ministry.
I love the way you put committed to rebuild. Sometimes when we're committed to something and we know in our heart or feel in our heart or sense in our heart that it's of God, and then we start out on the road and we get adversity along the way, there's always, it seems to be for me and maybe even for others, this temptation to say, well, maybe that's not what God has for us right now. How have you seen that playing out when we think about the journey of this congregation, trying to discern whether the hindrance is of God or whether the hindrance is just a hindrance, but the commitment to keep on going?
With reference to the physical facility of the building, I think the challenge for us then was whether the facility itself was our ego justification. We're going to prove that we're going to redo in spite of the disaster that has occurred. There were others who thought that we couldn't and wouldn't, so we're going to show that we did. Whether it is that, our ego, or whether it is really the opportunity for ministry. And that was a thing that really was a deciding something when we made the decision to come here.
Now, Pastor, she was sharing, I started thinking about opportunities. Sometimes in life we have opportunities, and at times in life those opportunities can present themselves and we may miss those opportunities. When you were talking about this facility here, it was available while the congregation was thinking about rebuilding at the other site. And yet, a year later, this building was still available. And what would have happened if this building would not have been available then? We had an opportunity that we could have missed, but yet God saw fit to make sure that this building was still available.
I don't think that God really manipulates everything that happens in life, but I do think that our responsibility is to make the best choice that we can given the options that are before us. So that if this building had not been available the year plus later, then the options that we would have had would have been to proceed where we were under the conditions that we had. But then the decision of the congregation would be made on what its possibilities are. And God had made that a possibility for us.
Now, Reverend Jay, you did a sermon a little while ago, and it stays with me always. I use it when I teach, because you talked about the choices that we make and how often we try to figure out which way is up or down, and the good must be God and the bad must be something else. But this idea that we have a variety of choices we can make and that God is prepared for all of them. So it's not just that I have one way, two ways to go, that this way leads to multiple choices and this way leads to multiple choices, and God has every eventuality covered.
We call that quantum. Quantum revelation.
Yeah, quantum revelation. Yeah.
I was thinking about, again, in Acts, Paul's getting ready to leave and he says, I need to go to Jerusalem. And the elders say, no, you shouldn't go there. Paul says, the Spirit says I should go. And the elders say, well, the Spirit told us that if you go, this is going to be a problem. And then in the end, Paul, he goes to Jerusalem, he's in jail, the angel of the Lord comes and says, don't worry, you will get to Rome, the Lord will be with you. And the question that I keep asking is, couldn't he have got to Rome anyway? Did he really have to go and get beat up and get thrown in jail in order to get to Rome? The piece I like about that is the faith that Paul has that says, I'm going to go and I know that the Lord is with me, such that I take this choice and it opens up numerous new choices. But I'm not afraid of making this choice because I know that wherever I arrive, God is already there. God has already established it.
God did not make us as persons who are just manipulated by Him, guided by Him. We're not on puppet strings. We've always got a choice, and we can make bad choices. But those bad choices don't really cripple God. so that he's able to take our bad choices and make those choices opportunities and avenues for discipline for us, but also for growth for us. So that he's always got more options than we have. Back to your quantum thing there.
Well, Ken, I wanted to ask you a question about prayer.
Sure.
In that Romans passage at the end, Paul says, join me in prayer. And as we looked at in the Bible study, it could mean to pray for me or to pray with me. And the distinction that we kind of teased out was pray for me means, lift my name up and say whatever you want to say. So that could be that group saying, we're praying to Paul that you won't go, because that's the way the Spirit is leading us. But then pray with me could mean, I have decided to go, and I need you to get on board and pray the same way that I'm praying. However else you may feel about it, I'm going. So join me. But both of those elements are kind of there, the for and the with. When you think about prayer and planning, what comes to you?
Well, I think that our experiences and our choices, particularly as a people of faith, provides an opportunity also for us to share. I'll give a perfect example. Last week we went with Pastor to an afternoon service that was great. And I found it quite amazing that in the history of that church, they also had a fire. And through their collective prayers, they've come to the same position that White Rock has, to be a beacon of hope in a community that God has ordained them to be. And through the fire and through prayers, even though they weren't aware of it, and even though White Rock wasn't aware of it, we are in a central neighborhood where White Rock makes a difference. And in the same way, that church makes a difference. And even in our jobs, wherever we are, we're praying people, we're people of faith. I've found that even in my discomfort, I still make a difference because I am connected to the prayers of the people. People are praying for me even when I don't know it. And I'm praying for the Lord to get me out of this mess. And in many ways, it is through the discomfort level that the best comes out in me, because I cease to rely upon myself. And through my prayer, I'm relying upon the weapons of our warfare, not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. God has given us a tremendous weapon with prayer, and that in turn keeps us in the midst of our journey, because there are going to be adversaries. I wish it would be easy. I don't like to see struggle. I don't like to struggle myself. But I am a stronger person, a stronger preacher, a stronger servant. Because there are many times where God told me to go somewhere, and I said, wait a minute, well, Lord, this is not what I perceive to be, as Paul, the plan that you had for me. However, I have found after the fact, as you and Pastor said, that this is exactly what he wanted us to do.
I think, Steve, that pray with me also has the option of being a prayer with me, because I'm still undecided. And therefore joining with me in my indecision or lack of decision brings others into the experience with you, so that it becomes not just a single choice, it becomes a choice and an experience that belongs to a wider group, because you can't pray with or for without identifying with.
Another story a little earlier where Paul begins his second missionary journey. And as he goes, he attempts to revisit some spots where he's been before. He's with a new partner, with Silas. And as he goes, he says, we went here and the Spirit prevented us. We went here and the Spirit prevented us. And then they end up all the way on the far eastern coast, and he has the vision that says, come over to Macedonia, where he's never been before. Now, when I first read that, I wondered how Paul was able to tell the difference between the Spirit prevents me and the Lord is engaging me. But then I'm also remembering that Luke is writing this after it's been done. So they're looking back and saying, now we understand. It's always clear after.
Absolutely so. I have no thought that Paul knew all the way through that the Lord's blocking me. He must have gotten some frustrations on that. But when he looked at how things moved and the overall journey. He can say the Lord did this and the Lord did that. Because it wasn't me. I wouldn't have chosen that. But the Lord opened doors. I couldn't go here. So I went here. Because it was mission that was involved. And you can't pout with the Lord and say, if I can't go there, I won't go anywhere. It is mission and ministry that is at the heart of who we are and what we do. And with that, our church theme, for instance, says a great door for effectual service is open unto us. There are many adversaries. Sometimes the adversaries can close doors, but when this door is closed, the Lord can open some other doors. And those open doors may give us more effective arenas of service than the door at which we might first have knocked or sought to enter.
Thank you for your attention. And remember, you can respond to this video either at the YouTube channel or on the White Rock Facebook page. We're also interested in any comments that you have on this video and on suggestions that you have for other topics you'd like us to cover. God bless you.